Hello, I'm Andrew Pearce and this is The Daily Show from the Daily Mail newsroom. Sex over 50, why a study shows it's positively good for women who have sex every week when they've passed the half-century mark. What about us blokes? That's what I want to know. Fizzy tea, it's all the rage, and I'm going to be trying some. The coronavirus, the NHS under pressure to step up precautions in case the virus comes here from China. 2 towns have been completely closed down. But first, Ed Balls, the former cabinet minister. He's on TV tonight talking about his tour around Euroland. He's also on The Daily Show with me talking about that. He's also talking about the Labour leadership contest and who he definitely doesn't want to succeed, Jeremy Corbyn. Now, tonight, Ed Balls appears on our screens on BBC Two as he heads across Europe to discover how the divisions exposed by Brexit are reflected across the EU. He meets voters to find out what the future of Europe holds for its citizens. Ed Balls joins me now. You've made travels in Euroland. You've travelled in Trumpland. Is it similar?
It is similar in its style because it's going out to listen to voters, to try and understand, to walk a mile in their shoes, to do some crazy things with them in order to get them to speak. And in the case of Trumpland, it was how are people voting for this outsider Donald Trump, and what are the echoes of our Brexit debates happening in America, people turning away from the mainstream, wanting a big change. In this one, we're going to France, Germany, Italy, Netherlands, Portugal, Spain, asking, are there Trumps in Europe? Is that same thing happening, that people are turning away from the European Union or mainstream politics to more populist or extreme parties? And the truth is, Andrew, it's a bit darker than Trumpland because America is a long way away, kind of quite exotic, quite foreign actually. Whereas when you're with the Le Pen party in their headquarters in Marseille, the National Front Party really, or if you're with the AfD, the far-right party in Germany, you can sort of feel the history. It's not just geographically close, it's historically close, it's culturally close. And that means that, I think in some ways it's more worrying, it's more dark at times.
It's on our doorstep. And did you detect on your travels, Ed, that people are just as angry, if not angrier, and these populist parties are saying, we'll talk to you and we'll listen to you?
Well, in the European elections last year, the Le Pen party came top of the poll. In Germany, the AfD, which in the German media they would talk about as the Nazi party or the new Nazi party, they came third and are the main opposition party. In Italy, Salvini, who is a very traditional Italian populist big leader, he was the deputy prime minister. So they're close to power. They're not across Europe yet winning. In the European elections, there was like a mixed picture where they did well in Italy and France, not quite so well that time in Germany and in the Netherlands and Spain. But look, Spain, a country which had a fascist dictator in the 70s, now has a far-right party, Vox, which is doing well in the polls, standing up and getting votes in the general election, saying we'll stand up for your right to be Spanish. And in the programme tonight, I'm down in southern Spain, seeing people who love bullfighting, who love flamenco, and are voting Vox, because Vox is defending those traditions against Madrid and the outside world. I mean, who wants to stop flamenco? Goodness knows. But they believe it, and Vox are campaigning for it.
Well, you'd be quite good at it, because we saw you doing that in Strictly.
And I do a little bit of it tonight, and it would be fair to say that I should have had a longer shirt, so it does rather ride up. And
the mind boggles.
And I think in the flamenco, in the Paso Doble, you're supposed to be macho. I find that quite hard. When I did the Paso on Strictly, the view of the producers was it was the most camp Paso Doble ever done in the programme. So I don't find it easy, but you have a go, and then we have an amazing conversation with the flamenco teacher where she says at the end, this is who we are, and I will fight all my life to defend it. And you see how populist politics takes those sentiments and can turn them to their own ends.
And if the mainstream politicians said, don't listen, they could be swept away, surely.
Well, in France now, the main parties of left and right are doing very badly. Macron has a new party, kind of a populist, an outsider, governing from the centre ground against Le Pen, absolutely a right populist. So in France, the mainstream party's in a lot of trouble. So in a PR system, that is easier, in a proportional representation system. In our system, it's about the main parties and how they change. But how often have you heard British politicians in the last few years talking about defending you against the elites, the out-of-touch elites? Boris Johnson, our Prime Minister, an Etonian. And Michael Gove telling us he's against the elites. But people believed it. Well, that populist language is very powerful.
And it worked in those northern heartlands, which used to be dominated by your party.
That is right. And I think Labour, though, looked like a city party in the general election. And if you look at Trump's success, and if you look across the continent of Europe, like in Britain, it's not in the cities where there is dynamism and diversity that kind of populism gets hold. It's often in the towns, communities further away from big urban areas, places where they've had one industry which has come under pressure, where diversity is more kind of disruptive and challenging and new. Those are the places. But if Labour is a city party, it won't succeed. It has to be a party which can unite the cities and the towns, Scotland as well as England, and it didn't succeed in doing that in the election.
If I could ask just finally, I know you're a pressure of time. There is a leadership contest underway. You haven't declared for anybody yet. I know you're quite sympathetic to the idea it's time for a woman, but what if it's a woman like Rebecca Long-Bailey, who is the Corbyn continuity candidate, who even did an interview with the Daily Mirror in Jeremy Corbyn's effectively office, telling the world it's going to be more of that?
Well, the starting point in politics, and I think the show tonight, the Euroland, is very much about this, I think, is you have to listen and hear what people tell you. And if you don't listen, you don't understand. And if they don't think you're listening, they're not going to listen to you. And anybody who listens in Britain in our election knows that Labour lost badly and needs to change, because on the economy, on security, on being on the side of people, it didn't succeed. And so any candidate who gives Jeremy Corbyn 10 out of 10, who says that we just need continuity, they're not hearing, they're not listening, and that's not going to work. Labour's got to acknowledge the scale of its failure and find a way to get back onto a more sensible track, which is about change, but also which reaches into the centre ground, which is about engaging with the wider world, but also showing people that it's okay to be patriotic, to be proud of your town, your family, your community, which shows people that we take security seriously as well as economic change. And, I think there are some candidates in the election who are talking about those issues. I'm going to keep listening to the hustings. I wouldn't say to you at the moment there is one candidate who I think is quite getting it right. And frankly, the scale of this task means it's not surprising. The real question is, can Labour elect a leader who, over the next few years, can start to get things back in touch? And that is hard.
It's a Kinnock candidate, isn't it? They prepare the party for the leader next. Who wins next time?
Well, look, when Kinnock won in 83, at a time when, by the way, he controlled the National Executive Committee of the party from the beginning, it took him 14 years, and he lost 2 elections on the way before Labour, under Tony Blair, finally won again in 1997. Now, it may be these days politics happens faster. It may be that change can happen more quickly. But I think the scale of the challenge for Labour now is bigger than in 1983. So this is hard, and it's not going to happen quickly. And Neil Kinnock, I think, was a very brave man, and he faced up to some big issues. One of the very first speeches I can ever remember, I was about to go to university to start as an undergraduate, and I watched, sitting at home, his speech down in Bournemouth when he challenged Militant in Liverpool. Yeah. And that was a very important, brave speech. And my prediction is that if Labour is going to win subsequent elections in our country, there's going to have to be speeches from the next Labour leader which rival the bravery of that Bournemouth speech. So a test in this election is, do you think actually they can make that speech? That's an important question.
Very important question. That's Ed Balls. His programme is tonight, Travels in Euroland with Ed Balls, BBC 2, 9 p.m. I'll be watching. Headlines on all the front pages in the Mail. It's UK on killer virus alert. Death toll in China doubles. An NHS helpline on standby. 2 Chinese cities have gone into lockdown in an attempt to stop the spread of the coronavirus. And we've just heard that Chinese New Year celebrations, which were imminent, have been cancelled in London. Joining me now is Dr. Andrew Freedman, who's reader in infectious diseases at Cardiff University. Dr. Freedman, should we be panicking, worrying, or a little anxious? What do you think?
Oh, we definitely shouldn't be panicking at this stage. It's right to be a little anxious. I think we have to take every precaution. But at this stage, there have been no cases identified in the UK. And I think time will tell just how much this virus is going to spread around the world. And if it does cause many more cases, then further precautions will be put in place.
Britain has been criticised, the Department of Health has been criticised because people arriving from Wuhan at Heathrow Airport were given one-page leaflets to passengers warning them if they felt the following symptoms they should get in touch with NHS Direct, whereas in the United States, Singapore, other places, people were being given having their temperatures taken. Do you think that's a sign that perhaps we've been a little slow on the uptake, or are you relaxed about what's been done so far?
I'm relaxed so far. I think we've done everything we've needed to do. Of course, there will be no more flights coming from Wuhan. Wuhan is on shutdown. But certainly, I think that people who have arrived from there have been given leaflets, and so hopefully will know what to do if they do develop symptoms in the days to come.
If I can wrap 2 questions into one, do we know yet how this virus is being conveyed, and is there anything that can be done to cure it once people have got it? Because I think there's a 5-day incubation period.
Well, to answer the second one first, there is no treatment, no specific treatment. So if patients do catch it, then in most cases it may be just a mild illness and not requiring any specific treatment. But in more severe cases, then patients may require admission to hospital, supportive care, and even ventilation in severe cases, mechanical ventilation. But there is no specific drug treatment, and there's no vaccine to prevent it at this stage.
And just finally, if someone has symptoms, what are they? Is it flu symptoms?
Yes, I mean, most of these coronavirus infections start with a fever, a dry cough, and then in the more severe cases, patients may develop difficulty with breathing.
All right, that's Dr. Andrew Freedman. He's reader in infectious diseases at Cardiff University. Now, coming up, if you're trying to kick the booze habit, we might have the alternative for you. And we're looking at the best way to stave off the menopause. But first, it's time to find out what's on TV tonight with, you've guessed it, Claudia Connell.
Thanks, Andrew. Well, the Mail's Robert Hardman is on TV tonight. Inside the Crown, Secrets of the Royals is on ITV. This piggybacks off the success of the Netflix drama The Crown, and it looks behind the scenes at real-life stories concerning the royals. So tonight's episode focuses on the clash between love and duty, and that's particularly topical at the moment in light of the Harry and Meghan drama. There's lots of old footage and lots of snippets, and there's lots of great royal gossip. I mean, I didn't know, for example, that the Queen Mother wasn't very keen on Prince Philip in the beginning. Travels in Euroland with their balls is on BBC Two.
Willem's invited me to experience just how deep their connection with the North Sea really goes.
You feel things you have never felt before.
That is exactly what I'm worried about. Or I won't feel things I used to feel before. You're all crazy.
Ever since he danced to Gangnam Style on Strictly, this former MP Ed Balls has become something of a national treasure. His Travels in Trumpland series was a big hit, and this is the same format except he's travelling around Europe this time as the UK prepares to exit the EU. He talks to locals about their national identity and whether they feel that their way of life has been improved or hampered by the EU. Tonight he starts things off in Amsterdam, but he will be getting his dancing shoes out later on in the series. There's yet another cookery programme on BBC One, Best Home Cook this time.
I really, really, really like that.
You haven't disappointed.
This could either be a stroke of genius or total calamity.
About as Italian as a game of cricket.
Feels very, very clumsy.
It's basically the BBC's answer to Bake Off after they lost the show. Mary Berry judges the amateur cooks as they're challenged with making a birthday cake. There's some very elaborate and impressive creations, but some of them look very familiar though. I mean, I've definitely seen very similar cakes on Bake Off over the years. Claudia Winkleman hosts, although how she can see any of the cakes at all from beneath that cousin it fringe is a mystery.
Do get in touch by emailing me at dailyshow@mailplus.co.uk. You follow us at mailplus_. Now, time for our regular city update with Ruth Sunderland, business editor at The Mail. The £2 T-shirt bought online the other day.
Well, ASOS, we hear a lot about the gloom in the retail sector, but there's a bit of another side to this story. So ASOS, the online fashion retailer, their sales have burst through the £1 billion barrier over the period of Black Friday and the run-up to Christmas and Christmas period itself. Now, the shares have shot up this morning, and it's been a real kind of turnaround for this company, because last year they were putting out profit warnings and it all seemed to be going a bit horribly wrong. They were having some problems with their stocking systems. So it really is showing you that actually if you're selling clothes that people like at the right sort of prices that people want to pay, that you can still do well in the retail sector.
And is it mainly women or is it men's stuff as well?
Well, there's a bit of men's stuff. I mean, it's mainly, it is mainly women.
Yeah. And what age group? Across the board?
Well, it is really across the board now, yes. So I think it started out, so ASOS initially was As Seen on Screen, that's what it stands for. And it was initially quite a young demographic, but, now it has broadened out. But you do see that in women's fashion. I think to succeed in women's fashion, there are some that are very niche and aiming at the young, but now you have women, when you're 40, dare I say, when you're over 40, you don't necessarily want to dress in the way that your mum dressed when she was 40. So I think to succeed, you actually do have to appeal to quite a wide range of ages.
Why don't Marks and Spencer's learn from ASOS? Because they do well with the food, but they still haven't got the clothes right.
They need to. My theory with Marks and Spencer is that every season, you probably see we've featured their collections in our paper. They produce some gorgeous clothes, but the setting's all wrong, isn't it? You can have a really beautiful dress, but if it is displayed on a horrible rack in a strip-lit store, swamped with all this other stuff around it, it's not an appealing environment to buy.
So ASOS, are they going to continue to power ahead, would you say?
Well, it's been a bit of a volatile share,
right.
Andrew, so, bit of a roller coaster ride. So I would hesitate to make any strong predictions on that one.
Well, because you've learnt from the deputy sports secretary's predictions are normally terribly wrong.
I have learned to steer clear of... It's very, very hard to predict the future, isn't it?
Very, very true. That's Ruth Sunderland. And talking of deputy sports editor, he's just walked in that gap. But you didn't hear me say that, did we, about predictions?
Someone who doesn't bottle predictions are happy to go for it. Yeah,
right.
absolutely.
Okay, well, you were spot on about the tennis. They're out. Let's not bother with them.
Yeah.
So let's talk about United. Even I heard that they lost at home to Burnley. Do you know why I'm cross they lost to them?
Why?
Burnley is the football team of Alistair Campbell. He used to work for Tony Blair. I can't stand him.
Yeah, well, he will be happy today.
Yes, he will.
He will be happy, but there won't be any happy Man U fans. It was abysmal, a terrible performance. Probably.
And they were jeering and calling on the Glaziers.
On the Glazers, yeah. I mean, this is the first time...
That's the family that own it.
That's the family, the American family that own it, who don't play... they sort of take money out. They don't plough huge amounts of money in, but obviously commercially, Man United is still very successful. So the Glazers kind of leave it alone. They're happy with the way it's going. They still bring in a lot of money. They've got all these commercial tie-ups with Chevrolet, etc., etc.
Yeah.
So the money keeps pouring in. They're third in the rich list. They're the third richest club.
What, in the world?
In the world, after Real Madrid and Barcelona.
Yeah.
So, they're doing perfectly well off the field, but on the field it's appalling.
But they've got to get into that top four to get into Europe, even in the second-rate Europe.
That's right.
The Europa Cup.
That's right. They're in the Europa League as it stands.
Right.
They need to get into the top 4 in order to qualify for next season's Champions League, which is where the big money kind of is. But as I say, they're not a club. They've not been in the Champions League for a few years because they've been, in the kind of 5th, 6th bracket. So they're so good commercially off the field that they don't actually rely on that 70, 80 million.
Maybe that's why they're not hungry enough.
Yeah, but there will come a point where they can't keep doing this, because there will come a point where that money does start to bite, and there comes a point where Chevrolet say, well, sorry, we've been sponsoring you, but you're no longer on the biggest stage. Yeah, and you're not on the biggest stage, so we're not getting the same profile. In fact, they have there's clauses in their deals with these clubs saying if you're out the Champions League for a certain amount of time, we pay you 25% less money. So it will have an impact if they're bad on the field. But last night was ugly. It's the first time it's really turned so vicious inside the stadium while Ole Gunnar Solskjaer's been manager. It wasn't so much against him, as you say, it was against the Glazers, and it was against Ed Woodward, the chief executive, who's the man who's in charge of putting the managers in place and overseeing the signings and all that sort of stuff.
OK, now that great scoop from the Mail on the Saracens still making waves.
Just incredible. I mean, such a good story, such a big story, seismic, the impact it's had on rugby. Yesterday was this grand fancy Six Nations launch. Forget club rugby. Here we go with the Six Nations, which starts a week on Saturday. But no one was talking about the Six Nations. Owen Farrell, the England captain, was up. Obviously, he plays for Saracens, so all he was asked about was Saracens and the salary cap and how's it feel to be relegated, and are you going to stay with the club, and are your teammates going to stay with the club? So yet again, the Sarri story, for what it's worth, we understand he is going to stay with the club. We understand that Sarri is going to make sure that all their big guns stay at the club. They'll get rid of some other players out on loan, some of those who need to be playing weekly in the top level, they'll be let out on loan. This should help them trim the salary in order to qualify under the cap, but their big guns won't play in the Championship, which literally can be stadiums where there's 2 men and a dog watching. They might play sort of showpiece events around the world and save themselves for the Lions tour, which comes up at the end of next season. So all very complicated, but it's just incredible how this still rumbles on, and it's still rumbling on today because the report has come out today after it was leaked late last night. So the full details are out there now of how Sarri's exactly broke the salary cap, and it's not pretty reading.
All right, that's Deputy Sports Head Matt Cabot. I don't think we can be bothered to talk about the Australian because they're both lost.
They're all gone.
They've all
we
gone.
knew they'd all be gone, and they're all gone.
Are you spot on with that prediction? It's about time you got one right.
They'll be home by now.
Yeah, exactly. That's Deputy Sports Editor Matt Gatwood. Now, if you enjoyed The Daily Show, and we certainly hope you do, please subscribe to us and leave us a review on Apple Podcasts, Google or Spotify. And if you want to get in touch, you email me at dailyshow@mailplus.co.uk or follow us at mailplus_.
Down on your knees, 43. Dancing Queen, 17.
Now, the millennials have struck again. They've rewritten bingo terms so as to avoid potentially using offensive language. Phrases like two fat ladies, 88, have been replaced by phrases such as 88, Wills and Kate, 38, avocado on a plate, 68, late for my Tinder date. Really? 9, get an Uber from mine. Well, joining me now is Victory Fassier, who is a plus-size model and a Miss Curvaceous UK finalist. Hello, Victory.
Hiya there.
Did you win?
No, I placed 4th.
Well, that's very good. Very good. Very good. So, if what do you make about two fat ladies, 88? Did that offend you?
Slightly, yes. I just feel like more than anything, I feel like it's just very outdated. I have massive respect for tradition, but however, I just feel like, especially in this digital age, where like one's image is always constantly questioned. You see it in television, you see it in films, you see it in media outlets, adverts, social media. Hearing something like that is just like an addition, I would say, to the major problem in society, especially in regards to size. So.
But does it really cause offence? I mean, I haven't played bingo for 30 years or 40 years, probably, when I was a kid on holiday. I didn't think of two fat ladies, and I never really knew what half the phrases meant, Victory, because they used to say Kelly's eye number 1. Who's Kelly? Who's eye? What does it mean?
I know, but even like, I feel like saying back then when you say it, there's that, kind of in a way sense of ignorance. Yeah, it's not harmful, but then you then find out as time goes by in current days, it is a bit more harmful. It can, especially in terms of this surge in mental health as well. It's very important that that is regarded and that's considered. It's super paramount. And there's just so many things I'll give you an example like 72 Danny LaRue. I mean, who is that? There's even more vulgar terms I've heard. 15 young and keen. I mean, stuff like that is just a bit like, oh, I don't know. It's like this is 2020. We need to evolve, and especially for bingo. Yeah.
But some people in the woke brigade, Victory, would probably think, Miss Curvaceous UK, what sort of programme prep competition is that? Isn't that old-fashioned and sexist? I mean, were you parading in a bathing costume?
We weren't actually. No, you'd be quite surprised.
Oh, really? What were you wearing? Were you togged up from top to toe?
I wouldn't quite say that, but just kind of stuff that I feel comfortable in. Let's put it that way. But I feel like it's just a celebration of size. It's not something that is often had in the day and age. It's just something to just feel comfortable in your skin and just embrace your true self. Yeah.
And the idea of Miss Curvaceous UK is to celebrate girls, women who are not stick thin like some of these supermodels who we see on the catwalk. Is that the idea of it?
Yeah, I feel like there's a bit of an underrepresentation of people, I would say, of my size or a bit curvier and larger. So it's just an opportunity for that to happen, I guess. But
right.
And the thing is, there's always that notion about us women being quite big and large, but people tend to kind of dismiss the fact that, okay, we might be big, we might be large, but we're beautiful, but most importantly, we're fit. I play basketball professionally on top of all the stuff I do.
Oh, right.
So I'm super fit, I'm super healthy.
But are you technically overweight, Victory?
I wouldn't say well, according to if you are trying to go by BMI, which is even that is in itself a topic for another day, but I would say I'm on the overweight spectrum. But I'm like I said
but
earlier,
you're fit. You're healthy.
Fit. Yeah, absolutely. I eat very well.
And had you ever played bingo, by the way, Victory? I bet you don't.
I have before. I feel like I'm 25, but I feel like I'm got the mindset sometimes of of somebody who's a bit older. So I enjoy different kind of things, things that perhaps 25-year-olds might not do. But I think that's the positive of bingo. I want to kind of flip the script and talk about, there was this kind of thing about the fact that the full English breakfast, for instance, is kind of declining. And people are saying, traditions are going away and that kind of stuff. I mean, that's not harmful, but something like bingo and that with those kind of connotations, that is harmful. So I'm all for, like I said, traditions. That's very important, but there's a way in order to go about it for it to how can I say, to prolong it, for the longevity of bingo. I'm sure people who enjoy bingo want it to continue forever and ever, but if you continue on with saying stuff like that,
all right.
kind of challenge.
All right, Victory. That's Victory Fassier, who was Miss Curvaceous UK Finals, and she came fourth. And just a couple of others. Now, health-conscious foodie slogans include 83, gluten-free, 38, avocado on a plate. Frankly, it's all ridiculous. If you want to get in touch, email me at ailyshow@mailplus.co.uk or you follow us at mailplus_. Now, recent research suggests regular sex might help to deter or defer even the menopause until later than usual. Menopause usually occurs between 45 and 55. In the Mail today, the story of when Vicky Rhodes, then 49, met Jack, 39, at his clothing store in Epsom. She says their relationships could explain why she hasn't experienced symptoms of the menopause so far. Joining me now is my very old friend Rowan Pelling, former editor of the Erotic Review and editor of Amorist. Rowan, so regular sex can defer the menopause?
Yes, I wasn't surprised at all when I heard this bit of news, because anecdotally, people have been saying this to me for ages. And yes, there were people who some might regard as a bit woo-woo. My acupuncturist had said that for quite a long while. And he really had a use it or lose it philosophy that he would say to patients, because a lot of the people who saw him were seeing him for fertility issues, and quite often they were older women. And he was quite often saying, well, look, you're not actually having enough sex, and your body is beginning to think it's in menopause because you're treating it like it is. So that was the first time I really became aware. And then my midwife, when I was 40 and had my second son, she just happened to mention in passing that she was still having periods aged 58. And then she sort of said casually, oh, well, it's because I'm always around babies and hormones, and this is common with midwives. And I looked at her and I said, really? And she said, oh, yes, but, the other thing is, if you really keep on feeling passionate about your love life, you'll have a later menopause. So those things stayed with me. And then, blow me, this bit of research comes along this week.
Yeah, and the idea is, Rowan, that if you have an active sex life, you keep your bodies and your hormones active, and if a woman isn't having sex, the body stops investing energy into ovulation and then enters menopause.
Yeah, that's the theory. The theory is that your body is kind of like going, well, there's no point sort of directing energy towards ovulation, which apparently is quite a sort of expensive way of using your energy. You have to put quite a lot of the sort of body's resources into it. So if the body has the idea that that's not much use for you anymore, it might start just tilting you towards an earlier menopause. I mean, this is still very much a theory, and they're trying to work it out, having observed a sort of correlation between the figures. But I think that would make evolutionary sense. And it's still only a general thing. It's if you have a pretty active sex life. And by the way, they're not talking, the experts here, about you being like sort of bunny rabbits. They're not saying, oh, you have to do it 3 times a day.
That's a relief.
Or even once a day, or even once a week. They're saying, well, I think this is quite reassuring. The definition of regular sex, as given by the researchers at University College London who found this out, was actually once a month.
Right.
Okay, so that's not too arduous. I think most couples, in between their box sets and everything else,
they can cope with once a month. I think they can. Rowan Pelling, thanks for joining. That's Rowan Pelling, editor of The Amorous, and I think that probably is a relief if you're well into your 50s. Once a month. That's all you've got to do, and you can possibly defer the menopause. That's all we've got time for today. For the latest from the Daily Mail newsroom, come out every day for briefings at 7 a.m, 12 noon, and of course 5 p.m, where you can listen to me all over again. That's all from me, Andrew Pearce, from The Daily Show. I'll be back tomorrow. Have yourselves a great evening, and good night.